What is going on, my fellow game developers? My name is Muddy Wolf, and in this video we're going to be finishing off our top-down shooter game by adding in a start menu, a death screen, and also a high score system using a save system. So without further ado, let's just get straight into it. So the first thing we want to do is actually rename our scene. We're going to call this the game scene. Reload this. We then want to create a new scene, and we're going to call this the menu scene. So we're just going to double click the menu to open it up, and the first thing we're going to do is just change this to like a different color, maybe white, something like that should be fine. We then want to add in a UI and canvas to our game, and we'll just leave it at canvas. We will set the scale with screen. I'm just going to set it to about 1920 by 1080 and set this to about 0.5 just so it's in the middle. And there you go, that's gonna sort that for us. We then want to add in a UI, and we're gonna add in just a button. Now this button is going to be our play button, so I'm just going to rename it to play button. We then just want to go to text and rename this to play. I'm going to set this to uppercase and then also set this to about 102 in size and bold. Now we also need to make this button a lot bigger. I'm going to say something like 640 and 150. I'm going to set the color of the background to black and then white for the actual text. This is just so the button looks nice. Now, I want to also go onto our canvas here, and we are going to add in a menu manager script. Double click to open up in Visual Studio Code. Now in here, we want to say using Unity engine.scene management. So we want a public void, and we're going to call this the change scene, and we're just going to pass through a string called name. And then in here, we're then going to set this to scene manager, and we're going to say load scene. Now you can do this asynchronously if you want to apply like some sort of loading screen. We're just going to load it straight away and called load scene, and I'm just going to pass in the name. That will swap it straight to what we want. Now, if we go back to our screen, in our play button, we want to add a new on-click event. We're going to drag in our canvas object, and we're going to go down to the menu manager here. Now, we're actually going to look for the change scene, and then we can pass in the name of our scene, and that's going to be game. Now, to make sure this works, we need to go up to File, Build Settings, make sure both our menu and our game is in here, with menu being first so it loads up first. Now once you have done that and that is all loaded, we can actually try this out by hitting play. Coming back to our menu, obviously you can style this up to look however you want, but if we hit play, we get changed to our game scene and everything works as it should, which is great. So now we have a menu to our game. We need a couple more things. Now, if I get hit by this guy, I am destroyed, and that is it. Nothing happens. So let's switch back to our game view. And then inside of our canvas here, we are going to add in a end screen. So the first thing I want to do is right click and click UI, and I'm just going to pass in an image and call this our death screen. I'm going to stretch this out to be the whole size of the screen, or the size of the whole screen. And then I want to go into UI, and I want to add in a button, calling this the replay button. I'm going to do this the same as we did before. It's going to be black with the text being white. We're going to set this to say replay, and we'll set this to 640 by 150, and we'll make the text bold, uppercase, and 102. There you go, that's looking good. But we also want a score and a high score system on here too. So let's go to UI, Text Mesh Pro, and let's just call this the score text. And we're going to pin this to the top and set this to minus 64, 128 on the Y, and just make the width something like 640 as well. We're going to say score and set this to 0. Uppercase this, and we also want this text to be black so we can actually see it. We're going to set this something like 72 maybe. I did not mean to put a line through that. We go back to scene, we can see this here. We can center it and lower it there, and also make it bold. And there you go. Let's duplicate this and rename this one to high score. and this is going to be the highest score we've ever achieved. And we'll be adding in a system to fix this, or sorry, not to fix this, to make this to actually load and save a new high score. Now we'll set this to minus enough 64, or no, plus 64, sorry, or plus 128, minus 128. There we go, but that could be 128 still. There we go, that's much better. Now we want to set this to not be bold. We'll make it a bit smaller, say something like 48, just so it's less in your face. The score is the one you've currently got, and then the high score is there. So this is great, but we need a way to actually manage our score and our high score. So on our canvas here, we're going to actually create, or actually we'll create a whole new empty object, and we're going to call this the level manager. We're going to reset transform, and I'm just going to add in a level manager to this item. I'm going to drag this to the top, and I'm just going to double click this to open this up in Visual Studio Code. Now, I'm going to set this to have a public static level manager called manager. And we're just going to set an awake function to say manager is equal to this. Now, the reason we're setting this as a static manager is so we can call it in our other functions as well. So what we want to do here is we also want a object. So we'll say public game object, and we're going to call this the def screen. We also want a public int, and we'll call this our current score. Now, we're also going to set up in here a save system and loading system, but we'll do that once after we've got this working. Now, we want to create a public void called game over. And in here, all we want to do is say def screen dot set active equal to true. We also want a public void replay game, which we're also going to need the same thing we used here. So we can still do scene management, and then we can actually write this out ourselves. So we're going to say scene manager load scene, and then we're going to say scene manager dot get active scene dot build index. Now that's going to load the current scene we have, or reload should I say. Okay, so now let's go back to our Unity instance, let this load, and then on our level manager we should be able to add in our def screen here. Perfect. We can also go to our replay button, click the on tag, drag in our level manager, and click the game, or sorry, replay game function. We can then turn off our def screen, and let's actually just see if it's working. So let's go back to menu, hit play. So we can now hit play and start the game. We can move around, we can shoot enemies, and then when we get hit by an enemy, we die. But the game over screen does not pop up. That's because we're not actually calling the game over function yet. So back in game, we can actually go to our enemy script and open this up in Visual Studio Code. And then if we scroll down to where we destroy our player, we just want to say level manager dot manager dot game over. And then we're going to copy this and paste this in another space as well, which is the ranged enemy. And then finally, inside the player, if we get destroyed by a bullet, we also want to call it. So you have to call this in 3 different places, and you can actually do this a lot better than calling this in multiple places, but I will save that for a different video. So now we have all of those in place. We can actually just hit play and then just let ourselves die once this starts. So we can move around, shoot this guy, and then here comes another, and we have died. And you can see it comes up with high score. Now you can see here that none of this is being pre-filled. We don't have our score being pre-filled and our high score. We don't actually save or update our score inside of level manager. So to do this, what we want to do is create a function called public void increase score and pass through a int called the amount. Now in here, we want to say our score is plus equal to the amount we are given. Now, if we take this and we go into our enemy, where we destroy our enemy with a bullet, what we want to say is level manager dot increase score. And with the basic enemy, we're going to update it by 1. Then if we go to our ranged enemy, we're actually going to give us 3 points per ranged enemy killed, just to make it a bit more interesting, saying it's better to take on the ranged enemies for more score. Then we want to go back to our level manager, and when we set game over, we're also going to need to get our score text. So what I'm going to do is get something called TM Pro, and I'm going to say public text mesh pro GUI, and I'm going to say score text, and then we're actually going to copy this and say high score text as well. And then when we get game over, we want to set our score text.text is equal to, and we can just say our score.toString. We also want to just say score plus at the front. This just allows us to actually see that this bit is the score. Now, we could do the same thing with our high score. However, the high score needs to be something we have a save system for. So again, we'll do that in a minute. Let's see if this works. So let's go in here. Now, we should be able to kill enemies. That's a range. So that's 3 points, another 3, a 1 pointer there. And then let's hit die. And that did not work because I forgot to actually add in our score, our canvas elements here. So we need our score and our high score set inside of here. Now let's try that one more time and see if we can get a nice score going. We have a ranged enemy up here and we died, and you see we have a 3 points on the board. We can hit replay and then we can just play again here. So you can destroy this, destroy him, and if we die, I didn't actually hit that last guy, so we only got 1 point. But you can see this is really fun game to actually play. Now we can actually destroy, but we don't get a high score. We can do really well and then be killed, but then we'll never actually know if that was a high score or not. So let's actually work on the save system. Now the first thing we'll do is in our assets, we're going to create a new C# script and call this save system. Well, I'm just going to open this up inside of Visual Studio Code. Now we're actually going to remove these and we're going to say using system.io. Now inside of save system, we can actually remove the mono behavior because we want to set this as a public static class, so we can use it from anywhere. Now we want a couple of traces. We want a read only string. Now this is going to be a constant for our save folder. We'll set this equal to application.persistent data path plus, and then we're going to say saves. So this is the place we're going to actually save our data. We're going to get a static read only string called a file extension. And we're going to be saving our files as JSON files, so they're easily readable. Obviously, this isn't the most secure way to do it. You could do it in binary, but this is the, for a high score system like this, it works fine. Now, what this does here is it basically tells us that we're going to find whatever the persistent data path is for whatever file system we're on. So on Windows, it will give us, it'll create us a, I think it's in roaming data with the name of the game. But there's loads of other things as well we can do with this. But in here, we're going to create a public static void called initialize. And this is going to basically just check if we have a directory that exists, and we're going to pass through our save folder. So if our save folder doesn't exist, we're going to say directory.create directory, and we're going to pass through our save folder just like that. This just means if we have a directory, use it. So now what we want to do is actually call this inside of our level manager on awake. We're going to say initialize, or sorry, save system.initialize just like that, and that will load our save system ready. We now want to create a save function. So we're going to get a public static void save. Now we're going to pass through two things. We're going to pass through a file name and also a data to save, or just the data. Now this data can be anything as long as it's converted into a JSON string, which we will do outside of this file here. So it's a file, write all text, and we're going to write text to our save folder plus our file, our file name plus our file extension, and then we're going to pass through our data. Now this, all we need to do, because this will save it to this folder, And if this errors, it will throw an error for us. So we just want to go to create another one called load data now. So we're going to say a public static string load, and we're going to create a string with the file name. So we're going to be passing back through our file name here. This should be a public static string load. Yeah, that's fine. The reason that's red is because we're not returning. So we're just going to say if file.exists, and we're going to pass through our save folder plus our file name plus our file extension. So we're just going to basically reconcatenate all these just to check it exists. We're then going to say a string called loaded data equal to file.read all text, and we're going to get again the same thing, file name plus file extension. Now we could make this more of a less of a thing, so we're going to create a string here and we'll call this our file location, and we're just going to pass in this. Now we can actually pass through file location into this instead of writing out two long strings like that. We then can return the loaded data. Else, if the file doesn't exist, we can return null, which will just stop it from just tell us that basically no data was loaded. And there we go. That's all we need for our actual save system. This is all you need. The only thing we now need to do is actually create a savable file. So back in our level manager, underneath the actual class level manager, we want to create a public save data, we're going to call it. And in here, not public class save data. And in here, we are going to have one thing. We're going to have a public int calling it our high score for now. We're then going to just call a save data, a public save data, that is. Public save data, and we're going to say int high score, short version, and we're just going to set our high score equal to high score. Now, to make this savable, we need to actually say system.serializable. This will allow it to be data we can convert into savable data. Now, up here, we want to create a new public save data, which we're going to just call data. So now, back in our game over function, we want to create a string, and we're going to call this loaded data and set this equal to save system.load, and then we're going to pass through the name of our file, which we're just going to call save for now. We could also call it data or whatever else you wanted, but I'm just going to call it save. Now in here, we're going to say if loaded data is not equal to null, so meaning it has some sort of data, we can actually create a, we're going to say data is equal to, and we're going to say JSON utility dot from JSON, and then we can pass in here our save data, and then we can pass through the loaded data to load. Now this is just going to convert our string from a save to our loaded data. In awake, we are going to actually set our data equal to a new save data, and we're just going to pass in 0 for the high score. This is just so there is something set before we get to loading our data. Now, once we've done that, we can actually say if data.highscore is less than our current score, we can say data.highscore is equal to our score. This just means if it's higher, then we can do it. Now we can actually save our data again. So now we want to say string save data is going to be equal to JSON utility dot to JSON, and we're actually going to pass in our data object here. We can then say save system dot save. We can pass in the file name, which is save, and the data, which is save data here. And that's going to save our data. Now, once we've done this, we can actually, before we actually save the data again, we can set our high score text dot text equal to our data dot high score. And that will give dot to string. And don't forget to also add in the string part of the throw. There we go. We also want to say high score like this is plus, just so we can see the difference between our score and our high score. And that is everything we need to actually do our high score. Let's go see if this works. So let's go back in here. Everything looks to be in order. Our level manager has everything set. You can see our high score is actually set to 0 by default. Let's hit play and see if we get any errors. So you can see we get no errors. Can actually come in here. Let's kill a few people. Let's kill you, and let's get killed by you. You can see we got a score of 2 and a high score of 2. That's not very good. Let's try and get better. So let's hit replay. Now, actually, let's get worse. Let's just kill one person and then die. You can see we got a score of 1, but our high score is still 2, meaning our high score system is working. Now, if we replay again, and this time we just destroy this guy, we destroy him, that one, and then we die to this guy up here. You can see we got a score and a new high score. Now, if we stop playing and we replay again, now if we just get a kill that guy, and then die to this guy, you can see we have a score of 1, but a high score of 8, because that is still saved in our data. So you can forever now see our high score and how that works. So it's super simple. And really easy to implement. Now we have a fully working top-down shooter game, which we can basically just keep playing until we die, which is pretty fun. And I hope you've learned something new in this video, guys. That's going to be it for this whole series. Now, the reason I'm cutting this series short is because I don't feel like it's gone in the direction I wanted it to. I want to start a new, fresh series about something that everyone wants to see. So go let me know down below in the comments what you want to see me create in the future, what series you want to see me do. If you want to see me do a new top-down shooter, but in a different way or in a certain style, maybe 3D, maybe even in VR, some VR shooter, let me know what you guys want to see. Tell me everything you guys want to see, and I'll try and create tutorial series on all of this. But that's it for this whole series. I hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.